The Acolyte is dead. It will not be missed. There might be a few thousand vociferous TikTokers screaming from their safe places about how the toxic fans and the patriarchy got the show cancelled, but they're all in denial. And sadly not the crocodile-infested river in Egypt. At the end of the day, there is one reason, and one reason alone, that The Acolyte got cancelled. No one watched it. It failed to feature on the Nielsen's ratings for hardly any of its episodes, despite the media's best efforts. There was no buzz about it. Barely anyone I knew even watched it. I imagine in total more people consumed it vicariously through various YouTube channels than watched it on Disney+. It was an abject failure. And that might not have been the big problem it was, if not for the fact that it cost $180 million.
You serious?
How it cost that amount is a question that I suspect only those very creative Disney accountants can answer. But it did, and it was very public. When that information is out there loud and proud, you have to deliver. And largely, all The Acolyte delivered was laughter. Let's not forget that The Acolyte was also the on-screen debut of Disney's pride and joy, The High Republic. Already a massive failure in terms of literature, not impacting any of the bestseller lists and subject to almost universal derision and staggeringly poor sales. I firmly believe that Kathleen Kennedy had Leslie Headland lined up as an eventual successor, being groomed as such, certainly like some kind of master Sith, seeing the boundless lack of talent that reminds her of herself. Now? Well, given the high-profile failure of the latest Disney Star Wars catastrophe, who can say? I'm sure Headland will get another project. People with her opinions and demographic are largely bulletproof to a certain degree, but I imagine it will be some low-profile show, likely with a certain amount of oversight and supervision from someone else. For The Acolyte was, by any measure of the term, bad. It failed on nearly every single metric. The marketing was laughable. Totally focused in the wrong place.
So my character, you know, she's a powerful leader. She's a powerful leader. Yes. In a very woman-centered world, which I was very excited to kind of be that, because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was kind of cool to have like this sort of woman-centered figure.
What are you, stupid?
Insulting current fans while searching for that ever-elusive modern audience who just continuously fail to make an appearance.
He's out of line, but he's right.
The derision train continued, with Leslie proudly telling us how it was based on her experience as a gay woman. It would be about power, who is allowed to use it. A cross between Frozen and Kill Bill.
What the hell is even that?
Oh yes, this is the woman whose favourite Star Wars is all the Star Wars.
So when are you writing a Star Wars movie?
Oh, please, Queen Kathleen Kennedy.
Anyway, it got worse, as the release of the show approached with some reasonable interviews, including one of the stars saying Anakin blew up the Death Star. A soundbite that it was the gayest Star Wars ever. You do realise that most people aren't gay, right? It's not really as much of a selling point to the vast majority of people. In fact, the vast majority of people haven't been marketed to at all, which is why no bastard watched it. The pre-release tour had big Rings of Power superfans vibes. Nothing was looking good. The signs of failure were already there. Breaths were bated. YouTube thumbnails were drafted. And then it was released. And it was bad. The first 2 episodes were bad enough, but it just got worse and worse. For a start, the murder mystery stopped being a mystery in the first episode. We had a campfire in space. The acting was atrocious, the dialogue was laughable, and the characters were dull. Classic Disney Star Wars. OSHA was put on a ship with no human guards. All the criminals were white dudes, giving representation to the demographic that makes up the majority of the actual Star Wars fandom. I mean, she is suspected of the murder of a Jedi Master, and they put her in a prison slightly more secure than a paper bag. And this is all in the first episode. Also in the first episode, she survives a ship crash that rips the vessel into pieces without a scratch. Not the last time that plot armour will protect her. Not that we care. She's completely unlikable and a personality vacuum. This is not aided by Amanda Stenberg's decidedly passive acting style. She's not alone. The acting across the board is not great. The guy from Squid Game is probably the best one, and he can't even speak English. He's saying his lines phonetically, leading to some awkward deliveries, and he's still probably the best thing in it. Still, wouldn't get any worse, would it? Oh, of course it would. To the power of one.
The power of two. The power of many.
The laughs were heard from Tatooine to Exegol. There was no way they were going to recover from this. And they didn't. Some average and clunky action had people ahhing and oohing as he vadered.
He vadered! He vadered!
But there was no saving this show. Inconsistencies, plot holes, lore breaks, and absolutely bizarre character motivation flips that make it seem like an entire episode must have been removed meant that there would be no redemption for the Acolyte. It floundered from low point to low point, and the Jedi were revealed as the bad guys all along. You could practically hear the show sigh with smug self-satisfaction. Except that the Jedi weren't at fault. The show's morality, on top of everything else, is also horribly skewed, and that is on the creator, not the audience. They went for all Jedi are bastards, but the Jedi did nothing wrong. Torben killed himself. Why exactly? Sol is murdered by Osha. Sorry, spoilers. And Hedlund thinks it's perfectly justified. Makes me wonder slightly about the moral fabric of the ex-Harvey Weinstein personal assistant.
He's right, you know.
The more that was revealed, the less sense it made. Every presented answer was nonsensical. Every contrivance that the writers came up with was exposed as bad writing of the most amateur nature. Of course, damage control was in full swing. Articles abounded about how the fans were at fault. Review bombing, the old classic, came up with depressing inevitability. No one was prepared to address the obvious, the Death Star-sized truth. The Acolyte was dog shit. It failed on every single metric. The plot, dialogue, characters, acting, even the production values in places were beyond substandard. I struggle to believe that it was watched by executives apart from Kathleen Kennedy, as surely they would have been aware of the damage that it would do to the brand. Maybe she wiped them all out, Emperor style.
Last remnants of the old republic have been swept away.
There will be no one to stop us this time.
As it was released, deformed, twisted and ugly. And it was released into a world that had just seen one too many shit Star Wars shows. It had some of the worst acting I'd ever seen, the worst writing I'd ever seen, the worst scripting I'd ever seen, the worst dialogue I'd ever heard, and certainly the worst credit music that I'd ever heard. Even if there were enjoyable elements in the series, they were rendered completely null and inert by the overall ineptness of the show. But the reason it failed is because of the chuds, the racists, the toxic fans, because it starred diverse characters. Let's be quite clear, the Acolyte could have been nothing but the most dude-bro masculine characters without a diverse person in sight, and it still would have been an absolute shit show. And to be even more clear, the Acolyte is Kathleen Kennedy's vision for Star Wars writ large. Every man is a fool, especially if they happen to be Caucasian. The women are the smart ones. They constantly put down their male counterparts. The Fred, is female. No wonder she authorised 180 million on it. And she still has a job. The fact is that The Acolyte was such a spectacular failure and such a phenomenal waste of money that I imagine there were quite a few shareholders really very unhappy. And people that invest that kind of money into a company really don't like to see that money wasted.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
So Disney had no choice. Why did The Acolyte get cancelled? It wasn't the review bombing. It wasn't the dude bros. It wasn't the toxic fans. It was the numbers. The very large number that was the budget, and the very, very low number that was the viewership. And with it, with a rancid, flatulent wheeze, the High Republic dies too. Disney's pride and joy, their fleshed out addition to Lucas's universe where they can preempt and predate everything that he did. Rest in piss, Acolyte. Burn in hell.